into Miller Driscoll Cider Mill and Middlebrook. It was very helpful for us and I think for the administrators too. So looking forward to another productive conversation today. So Bob, if you want to get things started,
yes.
We're all yours.
Thank you, Ms. Finkelstein. So I have for everybody a copy of the overview of the process for developing the Wilton High School budget. And I think that's better since we're in a closed setting rather than getting up and presenting. We have a brief series of slides that I think tells the story. And I think it'll be helpful for the board to see the progression. So I'll pass some this way. Pass them this way, just to make our thinking visible about how we're developing the budget to meet the students' needs, which is our primary charge, and taking care of our students and families. You're welcome. And there is some room on those to take notes if you need to, and we got extras.
Oh,
I don't even. Does everybody have a copy? Okay. So the first one is obviously the title slide, and then the second one here is something that's very important because when we look at the vision statement and our core values and beliefs, this is the document and the underpinnings for our budget development process. And the vision drives what we do. So what we're looking at is when we make these decisions, are we fostering inquiry, innovation, and creative expression, which are very important to us. One of the things we're always trying to do is look at personalized learning environment, and I'll address that later on with a slide around class size. And then what I describe as the hallmarks for students of the vision statement, which are leadership, integrity, scholarship, and empathy. So those are very important. And then in the core values, are we promoting and designing a collaborative working environment, both for students and for staff members? Are we looking at collaborative work and disciplines across a variety of media in the context of the new BYOD initiative? And then certainly with our students' civic and personal engagement, are we engaging them within the school and beyond? And then finally here, we pride ourselves, we always say we're an academics first high school focused on academic excellence. So as you interpret the slides and the budget, if you can frame your thinking through the vision statement, I think that'll be helpful for all of us. On the next slide, you'll see our priorities, and very succinctly, what we want to do is we want to support the instructional core of students, teachers, and content. All right, that's our primary focus. We want to meet and exceed the needs of students, both academically, socially, and emotionally. And what we try to do and want to do is provide a high level of service to our students and our families. That's what we charge ourselves to do. Regarding personalized learning, I just cited policy 6151, the board policy on acceptable class ranges for class size, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. And then as the board knows, and we want to thank you again for being so supportive of our 7 new courses and the revisions in humanities. I think we're all really excited about offering those courses next year and keeping a very dynamic and very creative curriculum. So the big picture on our budget. You can see the number there under the big picture slide here. You can see the total. And fundamentally, you've already noticed that this represents a 1.08 decrease, not an increase, but a decrease in our overall budget. I think that's rounded up to 1.1 in the budget book. So budget to budget, FTE is down. You can see that here. We're down to 137.39. And our overall operating expenses are down 9.67%, which represents $182,289. So that's the big picture right now with the budget that we submitted that is under consideration right now. Our original budget request, you can see there, $15,315,000. The original budget request represented a 3.3% increase over this year. And let me tell the story about that a little bit. What we do is we have all the different department instructional leaders in the case of the high school, and those who oversee different departments do a careful evaluation of where we are this year, what our priorities are for next year, and then they submit the individual budgets. And then in my office, and with Don's support as well, we compile the overall budget. So this 3.3% represents the original request. I'd like to point out that I think the instructional leaders did their due diligence. I think the board recognizes that we came in with their help. We came in flat last year. But 3.3% overall may not surprise you that much when we consider the contracts, just the contractual obligations with administrators and teachers and custodians, transportation costs that just rise anyway. So that was the original request, 3.3%.
Was there like one big ticket item in there, or was it just a breakdown of?
Most of the
lots of little things?
Oh, I'll get to that, the reductions, yeah.
Okay. I mean, from here, like, what was in that 3.3 that was cut? That was made?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. The 3.3% increase represents largely salary increases and then other priorities. So I'm going to show you some slides with specific reductions, because I think
Okay.
that's part of what you wanted to see. Okay. So on this next slide, we have the reductions in FTE, and you'll see that we're down one certified FTE, and to Ms. Jean's question, really we see that falling right now, divided up primarily in the core areas, .2, math, English, science, social, and world language. But as we always say at the high school, that's going to depend on how the students register in the coming months with the registration process. And we have a reduction of 3 classified staff FTE. Currently on the table, we have a reduction of the associate principal secretary, and we have 2 custodian reductions on there. So you have the 3 classified staff reductions and 1 certified. And here are some of the specific operating reductions, and I'm going to portray this in 2 separate ways for you. On this slide that says reductions operating expenses, you will see the difference between the original 18-19 request and the revised one. And so specifically, where you see textbooks and workbooks, and I know this came up at the board meeting last Thursday, so I want to be a little more granular here. What we had to cut to get to this figure of 41,000, we have 30 replacement architecture texts, which are antiquated, that we were looking to replace. 25 texts for the new ECE Human Development course, but we're going to have to find a way to fund those. We know that's a new course that we're excited to offer. And then some cuts to AP French workbooks, German textbooks, and French textbooks. So quite a few world language textbooks, and then 50 world history textbooks, U.S. history textbooks. So the cuts are, in this case, impacting the instructional core. The reductions here, where I have put 7310 down for you with new equipment, we did cut the PE system upgrade that I'm going to speak to a little bit, and under 7320, the majority of that reduction is due to the sound system in the field house, which, if you've been in there, you recognize it's very difficult to hear when we're either announcing games or holding an assembly or a pep rally, but I'll stop there. So those were some of the reductions from the original request, and on the next slide, you can look at those reductions budget to budget. And if you go down the change there, the change column, you can see the percentage reductions, and I think I've already told the story about those. So that, I think, answers Ms. Jean's question about some of the reductions that drive us from the 3.3 to the minus 1.1. The next slide depicts student-staff ratios. And what I want to point out here is that you can see the trend line, and this is specifically speaks to class size. You can go back historically to 14, 15 and see where we are student to staff. You can see the trend, 15.46, progressing through 15.48 and 17, 18. One of the talking points about this 18-19 ratio is that the academic interventionists are included in there, including the math interventionists and also the flex FTE. So what we did was, when we took that out, it gives you a true representation of really where we're going to be staff to student wise. What happens is, if you include those data points in there, the flex teachers and the interventionists work with very few students, so it skews it a little bit. So you can get a sense here that we could see some creep in class size. Not significant at this point, but that's something to keep in mind here. And the overall
I think
This goes to what I was telling you at the beginning of the meeting, that I didn't get the question in time.
Sure.
But if you could add projected class sizes, the same way you have it here, show us the 3 years, and I understand that the enrollment will change perhaps from
Sure.
department, but if you could get us a departmental projections for average class sizes. for
We will
next
do so.
year.
Yep, thanks for the question. Yep, we'll have that to you very soon. So Don, I think Mr. Hemmerly asked a good question the other night. Don's going to just talk about how we reach decisions around courses we offer and the extent to that we remove and alternate them. So Don, thanks for illuminating this for the board.
Yeah, well, Mr. Hemmerly made a good point that we want to maximize student choice, but our resources aren't infinite, right? So how do we go about balancing this? If we're going to be adding classes, what are we taking away? And overall, we like to try to provide student choice and let the students vote with their feet. You know, they elect courses, and that's where we move our FTE and our resources. But over time, there have been changes in what we offer. We add classes, and some courses are then taken away. The courses in this column here are removed because they've been replaced by something more modern or more relevant to students, or in the case of the two at the bottom, French, they're just under-enrolled. We would like to operate them. Last year for French 2, coming up from the middle school, I think we had 7 students enroll, and we would love to run that course, but we don't have the ability to do it under our, our current operating paradigm, so we didn't. We also alternate courses, and again, to maximize student choice. So there's a spate of electives in music, in science, and in social studies, where we offer 2 or 3 of a continuum of electives given one year, but not the next, and alternating in that way. So doing it this way and trying to balance it again with student choices and the way the students opt for course selection, we are able to add courses really without asking for an increase in FTE, as we're doing now. But we took to heart the point that we should make it transparent to the community that as we add classes, we also take them away.
Can I ask a question? The loss of French, I find that terribly surprising. I don't understand. And obviously, if it's driven by what's coming up in the middle school, then I mean, French is the language of diplomacy. You speak French, you can go anywhere in the world.
Right, but what happens is, these are intro French classes, so in a way it's a happy story. In a way it means that kids are really immersed in French in Middlebrook, and then when they come to the high school, they want to pick up with French 3 or French 4 and so forth.
Yes.
We would like to be able to offer an entry point
Okay.
to students who want to explore French for the first time at the high school. We also have,
Okay.
Kevin,
You read my mind.
the virtual high school to augment these offerings,
Yeah.
which, and we're going to keep looking for ways to augment that. To be completely transparent, our virtual high school suite so far offers a lot of world language courses, but many of them are more cultural than conversational and don't necessarily prepare a student for the next level of rigor in grammar and reading, but are good entry points. And we're going to continue to look for entry points, not only in French, but in things like Mandarin and so forth.
Okay. All right, fair. So we're getting, French 2 and 3 and on up adequately, populated from Middlebrook, from the middle schools.
Yes.
It's the entry level there.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Historically, what
Yeah.
happened was we used to offer French 1 starting at the high school. And what was happening over a series of years, we were finding ourselves in a position where the original number for French 1 wasn't large enough to have a separate
Combining 1 and 2.
course of 2. We were combining 1 and 2.
And that didn't.
It didn't work as well, so as a former French and German teacher, it broke my heart too, but we just had to be wise with the resources.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that's a good response, thank
Can you
you.
just remind me, are students still able to take courses over at Norwalk Community College at no cost?
Yes.
Right, so in that, I think historically, that's not an opportunity many of our students or families have taken advantage of. But as we're looking at some of these trade-offs.
Is that
might-
publicized?
Yes, I said,
I-
people know that.
That's a great question. I
Do
would
people
defer
know
to
that?
Bob and Don about how that's
Yeah, it's right, and talk
advertised.
about the program of studies, it's right
It is in the
there.
program of studies, and it tends to be, I mean, I'd like to see a wider accessing of it. It tends to be part of a plan for students who are on an alternate trajectory and trying to make up credits or move in a different way than some of the traditional paths. But it's a powerful pathway, and we can and should be looking to advertise it, maybe more than we do in the program of studies now, or the way that our counselors make people aware of it.
Yeah.
Right, it's a resource that is no cost to our students
Yeah.
and.
How many kids do we have right now taking advantage of that?
I'm sorry, taking,
taking advantage of that, like going over to Newark?
I could
We'll have
find
to- we'll
out
have to
for
get
you,
it.
but I would think that it's fewer than 20, but I'll find out.
Oh, it's that many though? I thought you just said like 3.
That's an outer figure. I'll get you a number.
We'll
Yeah,
get
it's
you
not
that
many,
number.
Okay.
sadly.
Thanks, Doug. So one of the questions that we thought would be on the table and that we'd like to answer for you is, you know, what would we restore if we were in a position to restore some of the cuts? And starting right at the top here, we talked about the textbooks. We would be interested in restoring the textbooks, again, to support the instructional core and specifically what goes on in the classroom. We have right now a cut to the associate principal secretary that we're facing, and so right now we have one person in the main office, and the person is not a 12-month employee. And you all have probably spent some time in this high school main office and/or others, and it's just a busy environment. It is part of the core of what we do. For example, the person who just retired was largely responsible now for producing the program of studies. So there are major and significant tasks that we need to try to figure out a way to accomplish. So that's something we would like to restore. And then we went back, when you look at the cut that got us to 1.1%, we got very surgical with our cuts in controllables in the different departments. We went back to the instructional leaders and we said, let's try to get the budget down more. So we cut classroom supplies, field trip funding, replacement equipment, some PD funds. So that's something that I am concerned about. I echo Dr. Kevin Smith's sentiments that we do have some concerns around this budget, and we just don't want it to impact program and certainly not performance. So that is something we would restore. And then this PA system, we'd like that to be able to project announcements throughout the entire school building. That's a starting point. You know, I think we can be, if we were in that position, we'd be even more thoughtful and more in-depth. But those are some of the things that are concerning right now.
Kevin, is the PA system something that could be part of the bonding for repairs and?
I don't have the total cost. I don't think so, because it was replacement, not new addition.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Usually it's a brand new
Yeah.
equipment and about 250 value and above.
And so, Bob, just correct my understanding, because we replaced I thought we replaced part of the PA system in the field house last year, the kind of
Yes.
giant ball that's in the center.
There is a giant ball there, but it's not hooked up.
It's not hooked up.
It's not working.
Hasn't worked in years.
Is that something that?
I mean, I paid
boosters
years
could
ago
help
to
with?
have it repaired myself.
So what did we replace? Because that was through the.
There is the speaker is there, it's just not hooked up. That was there. The
Why
new
is it not
speaker.
hooked up?
I don't know. My understanding is it wasn't compatible with the
With the
wire.
current system.
Our current system is
Can't make this.
very old
Right.
at the high school, so trying to add some of the new equipment requires some additional finagling and work.
So you have to change the infrastructure.
We really need to make some upgrades to the PA system in order to make it support the new equipment that we'd like to put on it.
So the thing that's that ball, is it obsolete? Is it never going to be
Yeah.
used?
It
Can we take it down?
It cannot be repaired. The wiring goes through the floor. There's an outlet in the floor where the announcer sits, or
Mhm.
that's what we, and the wiring from there going up to the ball is just showing up. It's been repaired so many times. And about 5 years ago, I got so frustrated. I had it repaired. And it worked for a while. We got better. And then it went south again. Okay. So now we use a portable system that's set up every night before a game and taken down, set up and taken down.
Well, that's actually just for the music. They
Yeah.
still use the same system for the announcements.
And it's just hard.
That nobody can hear.
People on half the court can hear, the other half can't. Right.
I asked, is there any way boosters could help with that?
I don't know, they're doing an awful lot as it is, to be honest.
Bob,
Mhm.
are you done or?
There's one more about, so and then we'll just hopefully have a good conversation here. The slide here at the end, Don's going to speak a little bit about this, but I as principal, I do support the value of instructional coaching. We have one instructional coach in STEM at the high school and one in humanities. And I think the value added in terms of the coaching cycles, the professional learning lab sites that the teachers are engaging in, where they're sharing and demonstrating best practices and building each other's skills through conversation and exploring lessons, I think is helpful. I think there are times when they are working on supporting important initiatives, including the recent Tri-State Initiative, for example. And there are times when we're working with teachers and we know they need a specific element of professional development, and we're able to say, you know what, let's get the instructional coach involved and work with these teachers. So it's been helpful at the high school. Don can speak specifically to it as well. Don, any insights on instructional
You
coaching?
covered it. I would just say that the leadership team continues to think that this is the way now and this time to deliver professional development in an embedded way. It's organic, it's hands-on, and whatever is learned and a transfer between the coaches and teachers as they collaborate can show up right away in the classrooms. And coaching is a suite of services and support services. It's only natural when you hear the word coaching to imagine the coach just sort of working with one teacher on an instructional moment, which does happen. But it's also curating resources for teachers to read and think about. It's organizing lab sites. Do you all know what a lab site is? We use that. A lab site is where a coach and a teacher and maybe a consultant will collaborate on a new instructional strategy and actually model it in the classroom while other colleagues watch in a non-judgmental way, just to sit and learn and take the experience in. Then they go back somewhere and debrief it, unpack it, and try to figure out how they could take that and transfer it to their own teaching and learning. So those are powerful tools for professional development as opposed to staler modes from the past where somebody gets a 15-minute talk from somebody and then they forget about it. This is hands-on, and it really, and I'll end by saying there's a through line. I mean, I do know that when the coach, now and in the past, when the coach works on a strategy with teachers, it's close reading, argumentative writing, and that's been supported by consultancies and supported by central office. When the coach dedicates time to that, I see impact in the classroom. If I'm there and I'm seeing what's going on, I notice that some strategies are being used that weren't as prevalent before the coach was involved in the intervention. So, for my money, this is the direction that we should go. There is a value, and we do get a return on our investment.
Is there any way of listing or quantifying, quantifying is probably the wrong word, but if in fact you're seeing an impact on instructional strategies, could you speak to perhaps the speed at which it has occurred and or how much more you're seeing? You know what I mean? If you help somebody, what is, running, like a track coach, all of a sudden the kid's running faster. But, so is there a way of listing, you gave a couple of examples, so I'm just wondering if there, because you can hear our question behind this is that coaching has typically come up in the last couple of years as a budget question. There's certainly a huge investment. We are in the third year, and so we're looking for evidence of effectiveness or evidence of impact. And you gave some wonderful examples, and I just wonder if there's a way of capturing that somehow in writing or bullet points so that we could see the specificity behind. And and maybe a best guess about how it, in order to obtain the same outcome, it would have taken more time in workshops.
Yeah.
Or it would have been more haphazard, or it would have been less consistent. I mean, I guess we're looking for things we can hold our hat on as specifics, even though they're not numerical, at least specifics.
Yeah, I can't lay claim to scientific data, or a quantitative study like
no,
that. But
and
plenty
again,
of qualitative information. Our team could probably supply you with the kinds of things that we've seen in classrooms and why we think they align to coaching initiatives. And
Right.
how fast it takes, how fast it gains traction, and the extent to which it's implemented with fidelity over time can vary from teacher to teacher. But we can
Okay.
talk about, in general, what we're seeing. I would think we could do that, my colleagues and myself, and provide you with that.
Yeah, I think I'm encouraged because in the presentations yesterday, we heard very positive comments from all three of the buildings about the value of coaching and the impact that coaching has had. So it reinforces my commitment to it because I believe in it. I think it's the right thing to do, although a number in the community who object and have raised objections to the value, et cetera. But I do believe it's right. It was encouraging to hear yesterday, and it's encouraging to hear you today. I mean, it doesn't happen right in year one.
Right.
It's a change, and people are inherently resistant to change. But over time, if we do the right thing, I think we are seeing value. We are getting value and getting positive results and positive impact. So to the extent we can identify that in some way, shape, or form. Okay, I don't know if it's quantitative, but in some way, shape, or form, i.e. testimonials from teachers or whatever it may be, to continue to support the commitment, because it is a big investment throughout the system. But I'm totally committed, and I think it certainly is the right thing to do, in addition to all the other professional development that we do. There's nothing like a one-on-one interface from a coach, from someone who knows what they're doing, can help and give direction, give suggestions, and improve the classroom environment and what's being done. So
We've had several presentations at our board meetings of examples from all schools, including the high school, about coaching and effectiveness and personal examples and experiences and.
If we didn't have the coaching.
I know, but when will it be enough?
never, never probably.
Right.
We wouldn't have that specific facet of professional learning. I mean, we still have teachers who are working together collaboratively. There are teachers who are going out to outside workshops and/or conferences, and ideally coming back and sharing what they've learned, sharing best practices. So those elements would still be in place. The big nucleus right now for our work around professional development is in our instructional effectiveness team meetings. That's where we have teachers getting together, examining student work, drilling down into student performance data, trying to discern.
That was a silent.
You can use that to field
Use that to field house, yeah.
Was that
We're just gonna hang it from the ceiling and the field house.
Mr. Hemmerly, you solved that one for us.
It's on silent.
You got so excited about what you're saying, Bob.
I hope nobody on the board sent a kid to USC.
That won't happen again, I'm sorry.
So I think that work that's going on in all the different departments, not just the core areas, but in the elective areas, that's a big part of the professional learning that we guide. We're all leading departments in terms of the administrative oversight. So I think there's quality professional learning at very much the grassroots level going on there. But I do think that these coaches who are able to spend their time researching instructional strategies and tasks and what is best practice, bringing it back to specific teachers and/or groups of teachers, because they interface with the IETs as well, I have found it to be invaluable. And I don't think we'll have trouble at all getting together a list of instances for you where it's helpful. I think we'll give you some information that will support it.
Could I just add to that? I
going
think
to
the thing that's going to be missing, and the research shows this, is the application. So there's very clear research that when teachers sit in workshops, there's little to no transfer or application into practice. But when you add things like coaching and collaboration, you get up to around 75 to 85% application in the classroom. And I actually will share that research with you tomorrow.
Yeah, and just I think to bring it home, I think about our mathematics instruction across the district, and we've heard feedback over the last couple of years. A complaint from some parents that the high school math teachers aren't teaching, and as we've dug into understanding what that means, the district has transitioned to Singapore mathematics. That approach is front-loaded with an anchor task where kids have to struggle, right? So they're not really given a lot of input and direction first. The idea is that they're going to experiment and make some connections, which is the complete opposite of the way most of the kids here at the high school and the middle school have been taught mathematics. So in thinking about the way that coaching has impacted the work of the teachers, we also have a group of kids at Miller Driscoll and at Cider Mill who this is all they know, so they're very comfortable with that approach. The work of the coaches, particularly at the secondary level, is training our teachers to, in that shift, and I think readying them for the kids that are coming through. So when those kids get here, this is all they're going to know. And without the coaching feedback, which is, in real time, highly supportive, ongoing, there's no way to meaningfully replicate that through workshops or sit and get seminars or whatever, however you try to describe it. So I guess for my money, it's as frustrating it is for some of the kids and some of the families that are living through this change right now. You know, as the younger kids are coming up, our teachers are going to be in such a better position because they've had the application experiences over time. And and Chuck's point about the research is right on point. There's no way to replicate that meaningfully to help them be as prepared as they need to be effective.
I would say that's true in language arts as well, as the middle school transitions their instructional model to more closely resemble what children experience in elementary school. The teachers at the middle school need that level of support to implement that model correctly.
Quick question for you. On the, on your first page of the financials, you talked about the reduction currently proposed versus what originally came in. It's about a $645,000 difference. But the operating expense piece of that is only $300,000. What is the other $345,000 of reduction? Is that the personnel, the secretary is in that, or
Let me go
what
back.
makes up that other $345,000?
Okay.
No, the difference between what was originally asked for and what you're
Yeah.
presenting is about $645,000.
Okay.
What you showed us, the reductions in operating expenses, is about $300,000. So there's another $345,000 of reductions that I'm just trying to get a handle on where those cuts
Oh,
was.
well, there are other operating expense reductions beyond,
Right.
these are just some examples.
Is there a big chunk of it in that $345,000, or two big chunks of it?
Some of them are in, things with the physical plant. There were some significant cuts there in terms of the plant. Well, that too, yeah, but some work in the physical plant. The remodeling budget was cut. There were other, here. I'll pull it up for you.
You know, Bob, rather than spend time
Yeah,
on that,
if you could
Just
get
answer?
back to us,
Okay.
yeah.
well, if we could just
Yeah.
sort of move on,
Yeah.
because
Because you
Okay.
still had some points on your list.
Yeah.
you want to finish up with your final thoughts, because
Yeah, I will.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
we're watching the clock.
Very good. I actually have all the reductions here. I'll get them to you. Okay. So the necessity of administrators was a question that arose, and I think that we are staffed appropriately for a high school of 1,300 plus students, and at this point 150 plus staff members. This team is going full speed virtually at all times, including today. And again, we are trying to provide what I believe is a Wiltonian level of service to our kids, to intervene quickly and appropriately, to support our families. I do not see how we could possibly make cuts at the high school level and deliver the level of service that we did. Getting out and providing, most importantly, instructional leadership and implementing the appraisal plan, leading and managing PPTs and 504 meetings, supporting personnel matters. I could go on, but it's a complex job. I think we pride ourselves, they know this about me, on a can-do attitude. We don't complain, we don't push things back. When central office asks us to accomplish something, we say we find a way. But we need the full force of the implementation of our administrative team.
Is there any, and again, totally understand and totally support it, but to augment the argument, if people start to push about administrative staffing levels, is there comparative data for high schools of comparable size and quality in terms of their administrative ratios? And you have to be careful in terms of what people are calling administrators.
Right.
I get that, but I think that would just be another way of bolstering that Wilton High School is appropriately staffed and not overstaffed.
Absolutely, yeah, including DIRG comparisons.
Yeah, exactly.
No question,
You know.
yep. The administrative support I addressed, I think that the main office secretary to support the work in the main office, the guidance office, and the associate principal is important. And then we have our presentation on the alternative high school prepared for the Teaching and Learning Committee in early February, so we're looking forward to bringing that proposal forward and seeing the extent to which the board wants to support that. We do have students, like any any high school where students learn better in a smaller, perhaps more hands-on environment, with a work component and a quality social emotional component. And it troubles me. I take it personally when we lose a student to an outplacement, but it does occur. So we're going to bring that proposal to the board, and we'll thank you for considering it.
Two questions, Bob. First, textbooks. Yesterday, we heard from the principals that subscriptions to online textbooks were ending this year, and so they're not renewing next year. Is that cost of that built into this 42,000, or is this just hard copy textbooks?
We always build the costs in when there's an online and a print version, which usually is the norm, we find. Nobody's
Okay,
just
right.
giving them to you. Yeah.
And this, what we would restore, is that listed in priority order? Like is textbooks number 1 to you?
Textbooks is absolutely number one
And then
right
number
now.
2, 3, 4?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, just quick, this is, and then if you could tell us, not now, but the dates of like, how old are the US history textbooks, how old are the world history textbooks? Things like that, like how old are the textbooks that are not being replaced?
Absolutely.
We reviewed a history textbook in teaching and learning recently. Is that on the chopping block now?
No, that was already,
purchased.
that was for this year, that was already purchased.
We purchased that, okay.
Yeah, no,
All right.
these
That
turn
was-
out to be U.S. history textbooks and world history. And I think that in some cases, replacement has to do with the physical wear and tear of the actual
Okay.
books rather than an ideological
Okay.
gap in the coverage.
Yeah, that's what
And
this
the-
textbook was.
And
Got it, okay.
the textbooks aren't our curriculum, they're a support for the curriculum, but the teachers find it to be a valuable support.
We talked yesterday about the dramatic increase in students needing, with English as a second language. I see you've got 50,000 in the budget for that. Can you talk about how many kids would that affect?
I'd have to get, that's an offset every year with Norwalk. So I'd get you the number of students that our specific SEL person is working with. That's what we need, ESL person is working with. That's an offset in there every single year, that 50,000. But we have our own district person who's working with a number of students.
Right.
I don't think that, my impression in listening to my colleagues is we may not be feeling as much of it as some of the feeder schools at this point, but we'll get you the data
Okay.
on the number of students who get ESL services.
I'll
Thank you.
have that for you tomorrow.
Sure.
The stipends that are listed in your detailed budget, are those department head stipends, or what are all the stipends? There's no FTE assigned to it, because there's.
In each department
Well,
area, the
you've got a
instructional
bunch of-
leader stipends?
I don't know, there are a bunch of
Give me
stipends.
one example, Glenn, or no?
Well, you've got, let's see.
That's 1118 account, right?
1118 account.
Yeah, those
Language
are-
arts, foreign language, math,
Oh,
science,
yeah.
all those stipends.
So there's a stipend for each instructional leader in the building.
Okay.
And those are the certified staff members charged with leading the department.
As a department head, so instructional leader, department head, one interchangeable, or?
Well, in
No?
the Wilton model still has the instructional leaders who still teach 5 courses
Yeah.
and receive a stipend somewhere in the, maybe
Yeah.
$15,000 range.
Okay.
Department chairs, the department chair model that we generally see, and the one that we've looked into in research, sees teachers teaching 3 courses, 0.6, and then 0.4 of it being for the department chair component.
If that were to be adopted, then would the instructional leader position go away?
It would. I mean, this is
Okay.
exactly the change that we made at Middlebrook
Yeah.
when we brought in the coordinators. And it's something we talked about at the time, but felt like with all of the change taking place in the district, we weren't ready to push this change yet at the high school.
And
I
they're gonna
think
come to us next year, maybe?
I think so. I mean, we look at it every year, and we get some disconfirming information about the actual cost of what it would mean to make the change.
Right.
So I think that the high school is probably mostly ready for that change, but it just becomes a question of how much change can you manage in a year, a couple of years.
So at some point you'll come to us where they.
We think so. We think it's the
Okay.
we think it's the right way to go.
So these are the instructional leaders, right?
Yes.
Okay. And they still teach a full case load?
They
Full
teach
course load.
they teach 5 courses, yeah.
Okay.
Can you explain the guidance stipend, because it's 42 versus the other ones are all 16?
Which guidance cycle?
Line item
I'll go to pupil personnel and then
it's
you.
21.
2110, 1118. It's in that little group with all the other stipends.
Yeah, Bob, I think that's, you've got the guidance IL stipend, you've got the civic and.
Civic and social leaders, Kim Zemo and Jim
Yes,
Hunter.
And there might be one more in there as well.
Is that?
Okay, because I couldn't, I was just
Yeah.
looking off of the line.
So we
item, so-
have, Kevin is exactly right, we have the guidance, which is Debbie Marino, who oversees the school counseling department.
Okay.
We have our civic and social learning stipend, which is a stipend divided, ILs, Jim Hunter and Kim Zemo. And then we also have the senior internship stipend in there, which is the person who oversees a senior internship.
Okay, so it wasn't just one person.
I'm not sure if this answers your question, but there are levels of stipends.
Yeah.
Depending upon the number of days that we allot for people to do their stipend work. So
Oh, okay,
people
it all
who
looked,
get-
when I was just reading down the front cover page, they were all the same except
Yes, so.
basically one.
Right.
So it was, but it covered 3 people, so that sort of, that kind of answered my question.
Rob, do you have anything you'd like to sum up with?
My summary statement would be, I've always felt the support of the Board of Education at Wilton High School. I know you care about our students and our programs. I think it's always been sincere, and we appreciate that going forward. I am concerned that we may be too lean in some areas and that it would impact services, and that concerns me. We really want to do the best by our students and families, and so I agree with Dr. Smith. I have some concerns about where we are when we're coming in at minus 1.1, and again, contractual drivers are in the 2 to 3% range. So thank you for support going forward, and Chris is ready for athletics.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Play the fight song. Play the fight song, play his intro song.
I turned it off. It was on mute, I promise you it was. It didn't work.
That nobody person turned it on.
Not me,
Not you.
not me, I don't know.
Okay, so for athletics, in one of my first slides, I also put in our vision statement and our core values and belief statement, because that's what drives our thinking in athletics and everything we do. In this particular case, working with the budget, our first line on the core values, perseverance in the face of a challenge. That's what I was really honing towards. Just so you know the process that I went through, I started very, very early, pretty much right when school started, in September. I started meeting with every single coach, the head coaches, for every single program, all 30 programs, plus Carlos from ProTech Fitness. He's the one that oversees our weight room and oversees the maintenance of all of our equipment. I met with him through probably about 2 to 3 week process to figure out what each program needs and what each program wants. So we separated the needs and the wants. I also took a look, at the same time, I do have a chart that's a 5-year chart for uniforms, because obviously we need to have our uniforms. And we do a 5-year rotation for uniforms. I just recently found out last Friday at an athletic directors meeting, most of the Durgay schools do a 3-year rotation, but we're at a 5-year rotation right now. Hopefully eventually we can get to 3. And then I also look at the non-negotiables. Officials are always increased by 2.5% every single year. That's set by the each official's organization and agreed upon by the CIAC. Our buses increase 3% annually. It's my understanding in the future they're supposed to increase 4%. Our coaches' salaries are contractual, so all of those things are all considered. Before I start putting numbers in, I put in the non-negotiables first into my budget into each program, and then I start going in to talk about the coaches' needs, and if there is any room, then I start putting in their wants. And wants are the first things taken out, which we'll get to those later on. Next year, fortunately for the YMCA, unfortunately for us, during the girls' swim season, we'll have to rent a different facility for girls' swimming, because they're going to be going through a major renovation over there. So
They won't affect the boys.
it won't affect the boys. It should be done. Actually, by the end of the girls' season, we might be able to have 1 or 2 meets at the end of the season in there. So
Where would that be perhaps? Where's that going?
Not sure. I've talked to Weston High School. They're offering to help. I have a phone call into Westport YMCA. So we're looking around.
Nice. That then would mean transportation costs in addition to whatever fees they will charge and stuff.
Potentially. We could,
Okay.
other sites that we use that are off campus, we have agreements that that's our home place and then the students transport themselves.
Okay.
So we'll have to look into those logistics.
Chris, does any high school require their students to buy their own uniforms, like we do with our band?
Some of our sports do buy their own uniforms.
Like ski?
Ski does not.
No.
Anything that is a personal item and it's a hygiene issue, they buy their own. Swimming, both boys and girls swimming buys their own.
And track does something.
Track does not.
No.
So some of those.
But I think
are-
track gets to keep those little shorts. I think we
The
have
shorts,
some.
we let them, we do let them keep because,
Hygiene-wise,
Nobody
ran
wants
those
those.
back.
100 miles and there'd you keep them.
yeah. In fact, a lot of track programs in the area, and my son and daughter both run track up in New Milford, and they have their own shorts. You just don't want to share those.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Well, I was thinking in terms of the band uniforms.
Yeah, no.
Right.
Kids have to buy their own band uniforms and sneakers.
And then their formal wear for concerts.
No.
And their formal wear.
Same.
Anyways, sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's okay. When it comes to the cuts of the original budget, either a percentage or an amount are directed towards me by our principal as to what we're trying to get down to. Then I take a look at all the items, on the list and see where cuts can be made. I also take a look at any personnel that's been added to any program or that could be eliminated from maybe a smaller program. So my last slide here is all of our cuts, well, most of our cuts. The only one that's not listed on there is money for an assistant athletic director, which was also cut for a season. So these are all of our cuts, and you'll notice last year, Dr. Smith so graciously offered me 2 extra field hockey coaches, which I took off for this coming season. So we'll be back to 4 field hockey coaches.
Which will affect what team? So-
It'll affect both the JV and the freshman team. They'll each have 1 coach each next year.
So these, just to be clear, these are cuts from your initial budget you proposed to
Right.
Bob,
Right.
not cuts from last year's budget?
No, these are,
Okay.
right.
Are you gonna have 2 varsity coaches again next year?
Yeah, we'll have a head coach and a
Co-coaches,
varsity assistant, yep.
So wait, just to go to Lori's question, these are cuts from your current program or?
No.
No.
Or reductions in
This
what
is-
your
this is-
requests were?
Most of this is from stuff that I had put in there for my original request. my
Okay, so
original
this doesn't
proposal.
exist currently?
No, with the exception of the JV and the games. I did have to cut games for next year. That was part of last year's budget.
So you're cutting 12 games off the hockey teams? How
For
many
the
games do
JV?
they
That's
typically-
JV.
For the JV.
The JV, not the varsity.
Just
We have to
I
have, we have a
should keep my
certain,
glasses on
yeah,
then.
we have a certain number of games that we have to play at the varsity level in order to be in the tournament, to
Okay.
be eligible for the tournament. So this is all any games that were cut were from sub-varsity games.
Is it true, Chris, that was not a full complement of games before, even
Right,
this year with the
right.
JV? Is
We
that
always
true?
plan for the host and to play a full, for example, ice hockey would be, I believe, 16 games.
Oh, God.
Um,
At least you have a regular ringtone.
Glenn's ringtone is much better.
You've got to get a fight song on yours.
I know, I'm gonna have to talk to
There's nothing
Purdue
like the
about
Learning
that.
Fight song, guys, what can I tell you?
Sorry.
So you're cutting 12 JV hockey team boys
For-
hockey
Between the
teams.
boys and the girls. Well, to be fair,
6
honestly,
home and 6 away.
we do not,
How many are left?
there'll be 8 each. We don't, and that's what they're doing this year.
8.
So now they're playing.
Four
Because
home,
we don't
4
have a full complement of games, because there isn't that many JV programs out there.
Ah.
So it is a cut, it's significant, but we weren't filling that anyway. For example, this year, the boys hockey team decided not to have a JV program because we just didn't have as many numbers.
Really?
So next year, the expectation is that we will have, and I talked to Coach, how many games are you expecting next year? He told me definitely we'll have 8 games, and I said, That's all you're going to have next year.
Chris, can you, just for the good of the order, because I was having a hard time tracking, how many boys varsity hockey games are on the docket for this current year?
20.
20. How many planned for next year?
20.
Okay, so girls.
Of all varsity is going to say the
So
same.
how many boys JV hockey games are on the docket for this year?
0.
Zero. We don't have a JV team
We have no
this year.
JV team.
Right.
So you're proposing actually to add 8, not cut
Technically.
6.
But
Right.
we're budgeted currently this year for, I believe, 10. We're just not.
So
we're
we
not-
just
we
found
don't
money in the
have-
budget for this year. Excellent. So
Better
girls,
stop talking.
girls JV. We have a girls JV team?
Yes.
And how many games are planned for this current season?
10.
10. And you are, so next season you are planning to have 6, is that, are you gonna have
8.
10?
We'll have 8.
All right, so it's actually net plus 2.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
And next year, you're planning to reduce JV games
For all the team
soccer,
sports.
basketball,
The
pretty
team
much
sports.
everything.
Yep. One one JV game and one freshman game, home and away, from all the sub-varsity games.
Okay.
So, being new, aside from the officials at a home game, is it a huge expense to, I mean, how much money are you saving by cutting home games?
Well, when you add them all together, it's pretty significant. Obviously, the bus trip to an away game is a bit more expensive. Home games are a lot less expensive because we're home and we're just paying for an official. So, but
But it adds up.
it does add up. Right, and I don't want to cut any games. I really don't. I would like to be able to have the whole gamut of games and give everything we possibly can to our sub-varsity because that's eventually going to be our
Right,
varsity.
right.
But in order to get to the bottom line, this is unfortunately where we had to go this year.
But you're cutting ice time.
I am cutting
like
ice
a-
time this year.
Like
Yep.
a lot, right?
Quite a bit. Yep. On the girls' side, because they're at a different rink, they've been at their maximum capacity has only been allowed 3 practices and 2 game slots. The boys have had 8. So by doing this, I'm making them even. The boys will now have 3 practice slots and 2 game slots, and the game slots I can use for practice as well. So now they're even.
By comparison, like Ridgefield, which has, you know,
Mm-hmm.
owns the, you know, it's their towns.
Right.
How many practices does their varsity have?
8. They have, to my knowledge, I believe they have 8 full practices a week.
The varsity team?
Ridgefield's team, yeah. Yep. So we'll have significantly less practices.
We are competitively at a significant disadvantage
Yeah.
in this sport.
Okay.
Is it possible to get a summary? There's not a
Do they-
summary in my book.
Do they have the opportunity, do the
Total.
ice hockey players have the opportunity
For
to
athletics.
go to the rink for just private
There is-
practice
Can we
time?
get that?
Creative.
Love to see it.
Yeah,
They
right.
wanted to
Yeah.
go.
Because
Like I know like baseball
athletics
team, the
is a
field is always
subset of
there.
the
So they,
Right.
you know, a group of them could always show up and
Add up
start
all the
pitching
great
balls to
games.
each other.
Right.
Okay.
So if a group of 4 or 5 hockey players wanted to get together and go up to Ridgefield, would they have the opportunity to get ice time or
Probably not. Privately, doubtful.
they'd have to pay for it
They'd have to pay
privately?
for it. They'd have to pay for it, yeah.
And Chris, can you just speak to the pay to participate? Because there is a, in terms of cost per student, ice hockey is far and away the
Yep.
most expensive
Yes,
because of the
it
cost
is.
of the ice time. But it's been our practice to level fund the pay to participate, so the hockey players don't, at this point, contribute more,
Right.
even though there is a practice in some other communities where it's differentiated by cost of the sport.
Yeah, and in some other communities it is. Any sport where you have to rent a facility, they add to the pay to participate. Ice hockey is a huge hunk. I know some schools out there, their ice hockey programs are, just for pay to participate, they're paying over $1,000 each athlete. Some, in other towns, any sport where you have to rent a facility, whether it's a golf course, a pool, ice rink, they're paying a little bit more.
Should we be looking at that?
I think we're there. I do think we're there, unfortunately. We're very lucky in this town. We don't pay for this pool. We pay for New Canaan's pool for our divers because we're not allowed to dive in this pool. We don't have to pay our golf courses. So we're very lucky. The only space that we're paying for right now is really ice.
But I will tell you, the hockey parents, because I know a few, will tell you why should they have to pay when the town provides a football field and they provide the
Right,
baseball
that's been the
diamonds?
argument.
Your varsity
You know,
hockey-
because why doesn't the town provide an ice hockey rink then?
But
So
your
that's their opinion.
varsity hockey players, have they grown up playing hockey in other teams? Like, do they try? Like,
They come from
so
all over. Yeah, some of our ice hockey are boys and girls. Some of them started in Richfield, and obviously work for the high school. Some of them started in New Canaan or Norwalk, and they come here. But they start from other places and they merge in.
They already know how to skate and play.
And some come in without any whatsoever, and
But you
they
only have
try to get out
JV
there.
and, well,
Only
now
have
you only, I know now
Right.
you only, but you don't have a freshman team is what I'm
We
saying.
do not have a freshman team, right? Right.
So, but, yeah, I guess what I was wondering, so I grew up with two brothers who played travel hockey. So the expectation is that, it is a very expensive sport and you are paying for it. So I think,
Right.
what I guess I was more curious if are they just playing high school hockey or are they also on travel teams?
The other
around?
travel teams, they shut down during the high
During the
school
hockey-
season.
okay.
Yeah, because they're not allowed to play. It's a CIAC rule. They're not
Oh.
allowed to play in their private organization at the same time. The
Well-
girls are, but the boys are not, because the girls are not recognized by CIAC.
How do we deal with the skiers?
Oh, that's another place that we
lifting
rent.
and
We
things?
have to rent the mountain, yeah.
Okay.
There's mountain time, so that'd
Why
be
don't we
another one.
provide a mountain?
I know.
We could build.
We got one right here, just, put a couple slopes up.
Why doesn't the town provide that, Richard?
So you have to actually, so the
Homestead
balance
Village.
has to be
Bring
raised.
powder
I didn't
machines
realize
in
that
and all
with the
that
pretty
kind of
boys.
thing.
Andrew, if you want.
You don't just share it with everybody else, there's literally a designated.
Yep.
And talk about hockey equipment uniforms versus football equipment uniforms.
We supply all the football equipment.
Pads,
Pads,
everything.
everything.
Hockey.
Hockey, we supply the jerseys and the pants.
So you see,
Because the
hockey
kids
players
use
are already
their-
contributing more to the
Right.
sport.
Right.
Is what, that's my point
Do the
about pay for
boosters
play.
cover
They buy their
them
own
all?
sticks.
They, not the equipment, no.
Okay.
No, what we'll do for the helmets, for all
Sticks are
helmeted sports,
expensive.
by the way, is we, at the end of every season, we'll send their helmets off to get checked. They have to,
There's a
by law.
baseball bat.
They get checked and they get this Knox seal seal.
Okay.
It gets put on
Chris,
the
do you know what would
helmet.
be helpful, I think, just around, like a simple spreadsheet by sport where there is that kind of equipment requirement, just noting, because I think it's easy to listen to, but it's easy to forget too in a conversation, just so we can help as we're talking about some of the disparity in cost that's masked by some of the
Player provided.
parent subsidies,
School
right?
provided, player provided. school
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Also, it's been a while since we initiated the participation fee. Do we have a sense of how our rate compares to other schools?
I can get that. Some schools are actually just recently starting to do away with their pay to
To
participate.
do away with it?
That's kind of a trend that's just starting back up again.
Interesting. And do we have information about how well we have done with collection of those fees?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
The athletics is 100%, because at a certain point in time, if they haven't paid their participation fee, we pull them off the field.
Because I know with activities, we haven't
It's
done as
harder.
well.
It's harder, yeah.
Yeah.
Co-curriculars.
Yeah, co-curriculars, we haven't done as well
Yeah.
with.
That would be a good,
participation.
another spreadsheet to have in the DIRG. Who pays by school, what do they pay, what do we pay, et
We
cetera.
should have that from here.
I noticed in a couple of things that you took out, there are three $1,500 proposals for the scoreboard at Lilly.
Yep.
Is that for a new scoreboard,
For a
$4,500?
new scoreboard, right?
Aren't the odds pretty good we could go to soccer boosters and part of the, lacrosse boosters? to
Well, I'm
get-
working on another avenue right
Okay.
now that
Yeah, we
I
should
shared
be able
with
to get
Kevin
our
the other day.
sponsored, a sponsored scoreboard.
Mhm.
We could, okay. I think it would be
I
important,
don't want
Chris,
to spoil the surprise.
No.
for the board, and I think it would be important for the town, as we look at the athletics budget. I asked Ann if she could just do a summary, add up all these great sheets and just get your summary numbers. It's a significant number. But what I don't think people realize is the amount or the level of support that we get from the boosters.
Yeah, we do.
It's hundreds of
Tons.
thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
And I think that's an important number if we could identify that in round terms, okay? Because I know when I was treasurer in football boosters every year, I mean, we invested $60,000, $80,000 a year or more
Wow.
in the football program.
Right.
That came from boosters, not out of school budget, the same thing for lacrosse. So I think it would be if you could have at hand a number, the dollar amount of support you get from the various booster clubs to keep these programs going, to keep them working, would be a big number. I think it would do a lot to offset, or perhaps offset some of the concern and some of the shouting that goes on about the expense of athletics, because people don't realize how much it is.
Right.
The support that is given by the boosters to
Sure.
to this whole program.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that would be a good number to have,
Yeah.
to be aware of.
Yep. Chris, last question for me anyway. The, what number, as of today, of our graduates are going to go on and play athletics, D1, D3?
Actually, we just started collecting that information. We'll have it by the end of February. Just off the top of my head, I know of about 15 kids right now going on.
Right. And what number did we have last year? Was it over 30?
Yeah, it was like 28, 29, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a significant number of
Yeah.
kids who are going on to play. I mean, that's, again, if you're looking for kind of hallmarks and indicators of successful programs, it's one of them.
Right.
Can I ask a question, very basic, and I'm just gonna make the assumption, but I'm always concerned about health and safety when it comes to athletics. So I'm just wanting some sort of assurance that the number of coaches per the number of players, that's appropriate, that you feel that you have enough coaches for the number of players in terms of being able to supervise, support, et cetera. And then on the athletic trainer side, do you feel sufficiently supported in terms of the number of athletes versus what you need, for their support?
Right. To be honest, several years ago, I said that eventually I would like to get to 2 coaches per level at every sport. Some sports require more because of the nature of the sport, but and we're not there. So I would like to get there eventually. I did not on this list because it was cut before I submitted. I did ask for JV golf coaches. Now people might think, okay, it's golf, but our golf programs are going great. We started girls golf 5 years ago, and it's tripled in size. So, and our coaches get some grief because they're not giving as much attention to the JV program because they have to pay attention to the 6 or 7 varsity kids. So an extra set of eyes in that program, an extra set of eyes in every program would be ideal. So ideally, yes, I would like to have 2 coaches at every level, which is where we were with field hockey last year, and now we have to go back to where we were.
Do you think we're being too risky in terms of supervision and safety?
Yeah, I think we'd be much better off with more coaches, to be honest. I really do. As far as your athletic trainers.
So are there any recommendations from SEAC or anything, size of the team versus number of coaches?
No, they leave it
There
up to the
isn't like
school
that?
because CIC looks more than just us down here in Fairfield County. They get the inner city schools and things like that, so.
No, I'm just thinking of a safety thing,
Yeah.
Or
That's
are
all.
there national standards?
Yeah, I just didn't know if there are any standards.
I can look that up. There
benchmarks,
might be
or-
from the
'cause
National High
if you're
School
starting to
Federation.
feel that kids are not
Mhm.
properly,
Or does FCAC give guidelines?
that's what
No.
I just asked. I said no.
FCIC does not, but the National Federation for High School Sports might, so I can look that up.
Yeah, I just don't want,
I don't believe we're under their standard. I don't believe that. I just
Okay.
think we can do more for our students by having more coaches out there. As far
yeah,
as
and
safety.
again, it's a fine line, and I really am kind of asking the safety question.
Sure.
I get that the coaching would be better and the
Mhm.
performance might improve, and I get that that's important.
Right.
But the bottom line has to be that you have enough
Safety.
adults per kids.
Exactly.
So that's what I
Exactly.
just want to make sure that in this budget there are enough.
Sure.
And certainly on the athletic trainer side, if
Yeah,
you're
well,
leaving
and-
us vulnerable.
Right, we have 1.5 right now. I would like to see that increase to 2 full-time trainers, to be honest. Other schools in our DERG that are the same size of us, they're at 2 trainers and up.
Yeah,
So,
I remember you said that at our orientation.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
Gretchen and I were at the orientation, so I was surprised not to see it in the budget, so that's
Mhm.
kind of what's prompting this question.
Right, well, I was trying to keep it as close to 0 as possible, so I didn't think it would be a great idea to ask this year, so.
So Chris, we asked all the principals, and then Bob provided today the list of, what we would restore. So if you could provide us like 3 to 5 priorities as to what you would restore if
Right.
you were
well,
given the funding to.
Number one would be.
Either now or if you want to get back to us with that.
Well, I can get back to you with more, but right now,
Okay.
number one would be our, I took away a wrestling mat. And our wrestling program, thank goodness, is starting to grow. In the future, more wrestlers are coming up based on what we're seeing projections.
And how
So,
much is that, a wrestling mat?
It's about $8,000.
About 8,000.
Yeah.
The second mat then?
It'd be a second mat. We have a second mat right now, but it's obsolete. It's compressed down to below an inch. We're not allowed to use it anymore for safety standards. Somebody can definitely get hurt on it, so we're actually getting rid of it. The mat that we practice on now is one of those lightweight mats that's about 2 inches thick, so that will never compress, but eventually it'll just wear out. But we're good with that one for now. Another one on top of that for space to practice on is definitely a need.
So that's your number one priority.
That would be number
If he
one.
threw some more money at you.
If we
That would
threw,
be-
that would be, and then another trainer, which I didn't put in the original budget.
And a
but-
second trainer,
Sure.
okay.
The trainer's tough coverage when you have games going both Lily and net on the turf.
Right.
There, you see back and forth in the cart. If you have
All
injuries
the
at
time.
both at the same time, it's just a nightmare.
Right.
Would having that extra .5 give you
Just
coverage on both?
Definitely. I would actually probably list both of those as my number one, to be honest. But-
Trainer, I would,
She has one more
I-
question.
So it's a quick question that he,
Did you want to add to that list?
We'll,
If you want to add,
we'll work on
provide
it,
a
we'll,
list.
we'll get a
Yeah.
list of like Ms.
Brainstorm
Rossi.
something.
Okay, and I think Brent
Thoughtful
had a
list.
final question.
why is the advertising from the football stadium not included in your budget? Is that in the
I
town
don't,
budget?
I don't get that.
Why?
We don't get the
But it's a
revenue,
football
we don't get
stadium.
revenue
Okay.
or
We don't get-
advertising.
we don't get.
Goes to the town.
But you get the rental fees in the
No.
budget.
No, no, no.
Okay,
Admittance,
everything goes-
all the admittance fees
But
go
But
to
the
the
rental fees are
town.
on here.
When we
It's for
rent,
the-
when we have to rent, but like when we
No, no,
sell
no,
admission fees, we don't get that.
Well, anyway, okay, I'll send you guys a note, but it's a $30,000 rental cost online, 1,100, 44.20.
In the athletic budget?
In athletics?
Yeah, no, well, it's actually under the high school,
Yeah.
That's an offset, yeah.
so, but it, so
Well,
I
we get
just didn't
no
understand if the
revenue.
advertising revenue, to me, it sounded like it should go
It should.
either
We
to the
agree.
high school or to the
Yes.
athletics.
100% agree.
You've said that a couple, what do you mean when you say it's an offset? Like, oh, we put that number in every year as an offset. What does that mean from a budget perspective?
Well, I think the pay to participate fee is
Yeah.
in there as an offset each year, where, I mean, that funding does, my understanding, it's been fluid to the town, it's all one budget, that it doesn't,
Hold on,
for
time out.
example.
It doesn't go to the town. It goes into the school operating budget. That was a point of confusion last year. And it comes into the general, our school district operating general fund and just, as an offset to the total bottom line.
Right.
So it's not particularly
It's not
funds
against
earmarked against athletic
Athletics.
costs, right?
Right,
Is
same
there-
way,
well, in-
participation fees
Oh,
don't
so
go
it's
to
stuff that goes
athletics.
into the general school fund and you just
The
kind
general
of
operating
allocate
budget,
it?
right, just to be
Right,
perfectly
not
clear.
in here, yeah.
One thing
Yeah,
that
it's just
was
part of-
Okay.
helpful in Ridgefield was actually putting it against athletics, because then you could see the level of public support. It was a percentage of the budget, of the athletic budget. So the town, the kids were paying 30% of the total budget.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a good way to show the public that the kids, the families are paying to play. And so it might, you may want to do
Yeah.
it both ways, but it is helpful to see it as a percentage of the athletic budget total, because then you can see the level of support from outside the district.
Yeah.
And that's would be great for the money that the kids are paying, both for sports and co-curriculars, to have that money actually go to funding athletics and co-curriculars, because it's a lot of money, and instead of just going
Thanks for
to
your
offset.
That, right? Like that check.
something else in your school.
Okay, well,
Buy that
thank you
wrestling
very
mat.
much,
Thank you.
Bob, Don, and Chris,
But just,
for all the hard work that went into
to
this.
make clear, the gate revenue, both football, basketball, and the advertising revenue, all goes to the town.
No,
That's what they were just talking
Glenn,
about.
I just wanna make sure I'm saying the right thing here when you're talking about advertising revenue. You're talking about the signs that are going up recently.
Right.
That's not town revenue. I'm just managing it for, Dave Clune is overseeing that right now. He's raising the funds through different, companies.
Yeah.
And paying out the bills for to make the signs. That's just running through me right now on a balance sheet item, so I'm managing it for them. They're looking to set up a 503C. It's not town revenue. I can't bring it into my books, has
Oh,
nothing
no.
to do with
Oh.
the town.
Right.
That is just a balance sheet item right now to facilitate the processing of getting those signs up,
Oh.
paying the bills, things like that. And then once they set up their organization, which they're looking to do, I'll transfer the balance of their money
Yeah.
that they haven't spent to date into their funds.
And
So
then
you're
they'll-
just their bank right
I'm
now.
with their banker right
Yeah.
now, yeah.
So what will it really go? Who will get
The
the
money's
money?
not coming to you.
Whatever the
That was like
organization
money
is
that
who
was-
they set up, whatever that organization is going to be,
my understanding was it was to go into a kitty to pay for the next field replacement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, that too,
Like
yeah.
a stadium
Yeah.
upkeep or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
to
it
see,
wasn't
and
like-
what the town does too, we take, our lighting revenues that the town gets for lighting up the different fields, that now gets assigned on our general fund for the replacement of the fields as well, for future replacement, so we're building that up as well.
There's like a sinking fund.
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay, now we are ready to move on to technology and digital learning.
Thank you,
Mary,
high
Thank
school.
you for all your
Thank
work
Thank you
on
for your
this.
support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you gonna?
Stop it, Bob.
Okay, I'll be here for
These things are answered.
I'm just passing around one chart and then the chart of accounts for technology. We had to restate a few items, so the numbers you see here are the corrected, restated numbers.
Okay.
It might be different than what you have in your budget book.
Oh,
It shouldn't be drastically different, but there was just one,
Oh, wait, this is
two lines we,
this is a replacement page?
yes.
These are, oh, extra. It's an extra.
Okay, I just want to.
Yes.
Oh, here, Richard.
Right. Well, thank you very much for having me. What I wanted to just start off with is the blue chart on the technology budget projection, and just look historically at where we were. We started out in 15-16 at $2.4 million in the IT budget, and in this year's budget, we brought the IT budget down drastically. And we did that because our 5-year goal is to level fund the IT department and the replacement of all of our equipment, as well as continue with our Ready Access program that we've been working on. So we took a substantial reduction in the budget, and as we're adding leases back in, you'll see our budget's is projected to climb over the next 4 years, and we should level off below the funding level we were at in the 2015-16 budget area. If you move over to...
Can I just ask, this
certainly.
is all in, this budget?
All in.
All in, staffing,
This is staffing, purchase of equipment, all of our leases, this is all in.
all in, that's what I need,
All in.
okay, thank you.
For this year's budget, because we have put in the lease for this next year is actually a $210,000 lease. That will allow us to replace about 900 Chromebooks in the district, 350 laptops and desktops as part of our replacement plan. New switching will be going in at the high school, as well as upgrading the wireless in our high school. That's the first of a 4-year plan where we'll work through each building, one building a year, over the next 4 years. It also includes replacement for smart boards and other instructional technology throughout the district. We're just finalizing our inventories. We've gone through the district, and we're through 3 of the 4 schools. We're almost through the 4th school, and we've identified serial number, put it in a full inventory system with the libraries. So
Barcoding and all that?
barcoding,
Yeah, awesome.
purchase dates, warranty dates. So we now have a very comprehensive inventory, and we'll be going through that to identify which units need to be replaced. As we came through our budget, we had our equipment replacement lines and our new equipment lines, which we have reduced drastically because we're going to be purchasing through the lease new equipment, and then as we replace some of our aged equipment, we're going to be storing that in a storeroom here in district, and we'll be using that for bulbs, projectors, and instead of buying new replacement equipment, we'll be reusing some of our existing replaced equipment for those items.
Right, so the argument used to be lease versus purchase, and we're solid with the lease model.
We're solid with the lease model. It's, after 4 or 5 years, we will own the equipment, but that's the usable life of most of the equipment. So
Okay.
as it reaches end of life, with the leasing model, we'll be in a position to go out and purchase additional devices to replace the units coming off of lease.
Okay, and it looks like leases have increased, or will be increasing. This is where the projections are important, 100,000, about 100,000 each year.
Yes.
Will that level off at any point?
That will, yes, that will
Isn't
level off.
2021 level?
2021, we will level after actually, it's the year after that.
Okay.
And 21, 22 is where we will level. And that we'll end up in a level funded year. Our leases are expected to come in at $210,000 a year is what our lease rate will be for the next 4 years. And then we'll have, and that's really what we're looking to keep our leasing at, and they're 5-year leases.
Thank you.
I think it's safe to say that if you look back at perhaps, 2015, 16, that we spent a lot of money, but we're getting such a better level of service today than we did 3 years ago.
I happen to think so.
Huh?
Yes, I agree.
I mean, it's incredible how the service levels improved and less money. I mean, it was, yeah.
And I think that's due in part to these two people sitting
Yeah.
here at the
Yeah,
top.
No
thank
doubt
you.
about it.
Without question, if
Yeah.
you'd like, I'll champion Fran and Eric.
That
Yes.
Because
was my point I was trying to get to. I just took me a while to get there.
I'll help you out, Glenn.
the conversations around technology when I first got to the district, where that nothing works, my own experience sitting at my desk in my office was that precious little worked. And then to have, make continued investments, to only learn that, there were problems with the pipeline. So I think I look back over the last year and a half, several things happened. 3 years ago, we were talking about this concept of rolling forward with a one-to-one, and someday it would be great.
Someday, yeah.
So Fran and Eric, come in, assess the inventory, where we are, what our needs are, and last November sat in my office and said, what you were thinking about doing 3 years from now, you can do next year.
Right.
And I said, let it happen, make it go, do it.
It's
And
remarkable.
it is, and I think also, the other change, that's different from the way that other school districts are operating. Eric is not a Wilton Public Schools district employee. He comes to us through a contracted service. And so all of that back-end IT support that we used to own here through personnel, the majority of it now comes to us through a contract. And so I think that's fabulous for the district because, quite frankly, I'm very happy with the service, but if tomorrow conditions change, the district isn't obligated. It's a contract that we can walk away from, or vice versa, right? So there's just, in terms of some of the personnel costs that districts have carried, they've been shifted. So we've seen that CCAT line grow, but I think the investment overall, it makes sense, and it's, so far, a better way to operate for the district, and over the last 365 days, far and away we've gotten more value for the dollar. I think with respect to the work that Fran has done, coming in and really putting together a comprehensive plan around creating a digital learning environment, augmenting the library learning commons, and then seeing forward progress against those plans. I don't think anyone can take any argument. Yesterday in the Connecticut Post, there was an article about the Library Learning Commons, and while it focused on Shelton, Esther Bobowick down at CES, who was the respondent, noted that Wilton was well ahead of the curve in terms of the transformation of our Library Learning Commons. So, and we know that.
Wow, that's great.
So I'm going to pipe in now at this point.
Are there any more technology
Yeah.
questions?
From a technology perspective, as each of the other schools, as you've heard in the earlier discussions, have come forward, they've also come forward with a wish list to some degree. Well, if I didn't have a budgetary constraint, here's what we could do. Have you thought about that? Are there things from a technology, from your perspective, that we should be doing? And I guess I've always been a proponent of, I don't want to be the pioneer and end up with arrows in my back, but I want to be there in the dust to settle with as good as I can be. So are there things that we aren't doing from your perspective that we should be doing in the technology arena?
When I look at where we are with technology in the district, we've moved technology forward. It's become much more reliable and robust.
No doubt.
Our infrastructure is our limiting factor in the schools still. So over the next 4 years, as we replace the equipment at the high school, and then we move to our middle school, and we work our way through the district, I will be, at each school, next year be better able, as we make that infrastructure upgrade, we'll be better able to support some of those wants, needs, and wishes.
But you're happy now with where we are and what we're doing?
Yeah.
You're satisfied, you think?
Okay. No, I think we've positioned ourselves well. I would say that as part of this 5-year plan,
Yeah.
the lease is key to the sort of sustainability of the technology for the district and the support of the Learning Commons and instruction and curriculum across the district. So, we are sort of the foundation in which a lot of that work is being built, and our goal is to keep that reliable, robust, and ready for use. So that's really what we're
And I
trying.
think one of my questions that I sent, and I think you've answered it, was, in terms of our technology support for learning and our infrastructure, how do we compare to our DERG districts? Are we in the middle? Are we very solid? Or are we lagging in any way? And I think that was kind of your question as well, Glenn.
Yeah, if you look at us compared to New Canaan or Westport and
Yeah.
Darien,
Are we
how do
sort of
stack
right in the
up?
mix,
Are we in
or
the middle, or are we?
do we need to catch up?
I can speak to it too, because I actually do some consulting in some of those districts. New Canaan has quite a bit of technology, but has yet to, they're basically where we were a year ago.
Okay.
They have a lot of carts, they have a lot of, and they have BYOD at the high school.
Just because you have a lot doesn't mean you're using it well.
Correct.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I don't recall what the other district was, that Westport has typically also done extremely well. Darien has rolled out a program, they've been doing it one grade at a time. So they currently are piloting an iPad program at the high school where every student is getting an iPad, which is very different than our model. We very specifically and purposefully looked at what the model should be based on where the children are, what grade, what kind of curriculum and instruction is actually happening at all of those grade levels. And what Eric and I basically did is his infrastructure and providing the devices were really based on the recommendations of what was needed for the learning outcomes.
Now, that being said, Chuck and I spent a couple hours with the Miller Driscoll staff over the last week, and that was one of our lines of inquiry was around the technology use. And the thinking originally was if we put 8 iPads or so in each classroom, teachers would use them as a station. And what they're saying is if we really want to leverage the technology, we need to be one-to-one, have the capacity for one-to-one. So that's something we have to go back to the
Right,
drawing board and
right,
talk about.
Right. And that's only in K1 at this point. Second
Yeah.
grade does have a full one-to-one Chromebooks.
Right. And Eric, just on the infrastructure front, Eric shared with me, I don't know, we talked about this a year ago, we're still running some Cat 3 in the walls at Middlebrook. Is that still accurate?
Yes, we have some wiring that's needs to be replaced in a number of locations.
Yeah, so we have superhighway, and
Yeah,
one lane
two-lane
farm.
road. Two-lane road. Being at a two-lane road, right.
Footpath.
Is that upgrading? in this
Cows
budget?
crossing the
That, those upgrades are in the budget as we move forward, so for the high school next year, all the cabling and all the closets will be upgraded as part of the project. As
Which
we-
it needs here.
Which it needs.
Yeah.
As we move through each building, we'll be able to reuse and recycle some of the high school equipment in the other buildings
Okay.
to sort of bring, them a little further along as they're waiting to be fully upgraded. So I think we have a good process in place. It's just, budgetarily, it'll take us through 4 years. I think the schools will remain up and operational, and the access will be there. And we'll sort of be future-proofing as we work through, so we'll have about 7 years worth of use of that equipment for the infrastructure at the high school. So we'll, again, hit that cycle
Gabby.
And just one question, because I looked at Andrea, just reminded me of a question, which is assistive technology, adaptive technology, are we where we want to be or need to be in terms of in this budget?
Yes and no. Fran and Eric and I have been meeting to try to bridge the gap between technology in the Wilton Public Schools and then the assistive technology side. We do have currently there is a part-time, very part-time, one of our OTs is the leadership of our assistive technology unit, and does primarily focus in on things like augmentative communication for students who do not have or don't speak devices that allow them to have a voice. In terms of the use of technology in an assistive way, I think having the Ready Access and digital learning program is going to make that less something special.
Okay.
Right, less special Eddie,
Right.
and more part of, we utilize technology as tools for learning. All kids utilize technology for tools for learning, which I think will help many of our students not see the technology side as something that sets them apart, different in a negative way. So I think that part is moving along quite well. I think we've done a lot, even in this year when so much is being done. We've talked a lot about really monitoring the purchase of applications and the purchase of software and the subscriptions to all the software to make sure we're not double purchasing things.
Right.
So that I think will result in some ability to reallocate resources. And then the task for special education is really to look at those kids with more severe disabilities motorically, when they might need head switches and all different kinds of abilities to access the technology that's now available to all children everywhere. So that's how we're focusing our assistive technology time and energy. The beauty part is we no longer have to, we're no longer spending assistive technology time and energy on things like, well, this child needs to now be able to type. Right? That's no longer considered assistive technology. That's now Ready Access. So now we need to think about a child who cannot type using their fingers, who may need to type using an eye gaze.
Yeah.
That is now what's special.
Got it.
So that's the
It's
movement.
fascinating, so I
It
just
is
want to make sure
fascinating
that we're supporting it.
And the management of some of the devices, that's one of the things we've been able to really get our hands around this year, is the management of the devices. We had a lot of labs and carts that we would have to manually upgrade. We've been able to centralize the management of those. So now we're able to reach out to grade levels and buildings centrally and push those applications out. So instead of sending a person to them, we're able to actually send the application to the device and not have to visit 500 of them in an afternoon.
Which allows those people now, rather than spending time going one iPad at a time, now they're able to sit down and look at how do we break down the barriers to learning that exist and find new ways to do it. So we're utilizing their time in a more assistive technology way than in something that can be done through a push program at the central office level. So it's made a huge difference on that assistive tech piece.
Thank you.
All right, so the segue is really to the digital learning piece. I just want to thank everyone. The last year and a half has been wonderful here in terms of the support of the Board of Ed and the community. And the one thing I would say is that a program like this doesn't happen without having full support from the entire community. So thank you. Also, it takes a village to put the whole thing together. So I wanted to start with a 2-minute video that was actually put together by our own, what we're calling our student IT innovators, which are a group of students that largely came in this past summer and have been coming in for several summers and worked very hard to make sure that everything was set up and did some amazing work. So I just wanted to show that because it's a good summary to start you off with.
Strengthened district technology has been hard at work to accommodate the needs of students, teachers, and staff through new digital learning initiatives and the implementation of supportive technical resources and systems. In the fall of 2017, the Wilton Public Schools launched Ready Access, which included one-to-one and bring-your-own-device programs that put a device in every student's hand. With Ready Access came a digital citizenship training initiative that helped teach students to use technology responsibly and for the right reasons. To support this program, District Technology has redesigned and deployed a robust and reliable infrastructure with faster internet speeds capable of handling the increased traffic. This means less downtime and faster connectivity for students. Online resources have been made more readily available, with extensions and applications to educational tools recommended by teachers being pushed directly to student devices. Discovery content at Millbrook, including online textbooks, quizzes, and labs, has been accessed over 220,000 times. There has also been an increase in collaboration between students through the Google Suite, with over 400,000 document shares in the district already this year. The Library Learning Commons have also been the central hubs for all of this innovation, with our media specialists leading the way to create new, innovative activities outside of the classroom and assist with learning and research. They continue to offer new spaces for students to explore and create with the help of their new personal devices. We at District Technology are all excited to continue to offer support and bring new, innovative learning tools to our students.
You know, I don't think if you walk through the library 5 years ago and walk through it today, the population difference is astounding.
And I'm going to speak to the high-grade problems that has actually caused.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I call them. So the first thing I wanted to start with, because Eric did speak about the budget and how that's fluctuated, is if you combine the two budgets, mine and the system-wide technology, what you'll see is that the before and after of digital learning and providing the Ready Access program is that prior to and where we are right now, and even going into next year, we're basically at a level field with having been able to provide the one-to-one, the Ready Access program for all our students. But in addition to that, it's not really about the devices, it's about everything else. And that's one of the areas that I really focus on is what is it that students are doing with these devices and the fact that we have this wonderful infrastructure now. We have a vision. We have a regular digital advisory committee meeting that we talk to a group of stakeholders that are advising us and giving us really great experiences that they're having. And we've had a process even in this budget. So as part of the budget process, Eric and I met with all of the principals. And we also met with Andrea, for example. We did some department type meetings as well. We looked at what was in the budgets, and in any places where we could do it, we centralized. So there are efficiencies in centralizing, but there are also advantages curriculum and instruction-wise. So we took, and I took this last year, took what was out there and what I like to call the Wild Wild West in terms of what the types of apps and resources and all these great tools that everybody was using in good ways, and try to find out what were the big important apps, the priority applications and resources that would really further what we needed to do with teaching and learning. And what we came back with was a list of, a digital tool set essentially is what we put together last year. Going forward this year, as we were doing the budgeting, we found that there were still a number of resources that were living in school budgets. And that if I were to centralize it, number one, going to vendors and saying that you want a district price versus a single school price, you get the efficiencies. In addition to that, you also get, oftentimes, and I've gotten this, and we'll talk a little bit about the PD part, you get training that comes with the resources when you buy it as a district. And then there's a very purposeful kind of like methodical way of onboarding what we call the new resource. That isn't just, one teacher really loving it and using it, but having kind of more of a systemic look at how you're using those resources. So we did that as well. So what you'll see in my budget that went around is that the digital resource line has gone up from this year to going into next year. A number of those additions have to do with the changing of where they were in the school budget to my budget. There are a number of new resources as well, but those are all really intentional and have to do with what's really important in the curriculum. We have, as a Library Learning Commons team, now begun looking at how we could purposely introduce particular tools at different grade levels and have like a vertical articulation so that by the end of 5th grade, every student will have had an experience with, all the G Suite, of course, but also things like Educreations and Book Creator, and having done like some sort of a video kind of project, so that we know that these are all things that going into middle school they can then bring forward and be able to use. So you'll see things like that in here. There was an addition of particular subject area tools like Raz Kids, Vocabulary, Spelling City, but as Andrea was saying, we also met and we looked at things that were being funded through special ed that shouldn't actually just be called special ed apps because they are useful to every student. So we took a number of those and actually moved them into the centralized budget, so they are available for every student. We also are now piloting Gaggle, which you may have heard of. It is I call it a SIPA 2.0. Essentially, the law, the Children's Internet Protection Act, basically says that anything on the web needs to be monitored, filtered for, profanity, hate speech, etc. And we don't have that in the G Suite. There is no such thing. Nothing gets monitored. So Gaggle provides that monitoring. As that video said, the students who put that together were taking different stats from us. And in fact, we've had over 500,000 shares in G Suite to date this year, which is meaning that, by the end of the year, we'll probably hit 1 million. Of those, we've had about 500 what I call, offensive language, questionable, that kind of thing, content coming through Gaggle. I think every single one of those is important for us to know that is happening. So Gaggle, I think, is a good addition. We added, for the first time this year, a program called Atomic Learning, which most of you don't even know about. Probably the teachers don't even know about it, but Chuck was probably very happy about the fact that we were able to push out mandated training using that program and getting reporting back through it. So it's a program that provides us a platform for being able to do that. So we did that. So we increased that.
Where is that?
It's in the, it's under digital resources in 6111. It won't say the breakdown, but I have that.
Yeah, no, that's right. I just trying to follow it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we've increased that line by about 47,000, but in terms of the new types of things that we're doing, and how we're doing it, I think is all really quite meaningful. The other part of this that I wanted to just point out is professional learning is very important when it comes to changing practices. If you've got a classroom full of Chromebooks, how do you manage that classroom? How do you actually teach with those? Those are all really important questions for the teachers. And what we did this year is we, in the beginning of the year, provided at least 12 hours of PD for every teacher. A lot of that,
That's a lot.
it's a lot. And
They need it. They need another 12.
They
at
probably
least.
need another 12, yeah. And it's probably the awareness years, I would call it, is just to become aware, become aware of not only the tools and also how to use them. Become aware of like simple things, like, the idea of the vocabulary of de-screening, half screen, full screen, like those kinds of things that can be brought up through the lines of each of the buildings. So, yeah, question? There was a question? No? Okay. So basically what we've done with that is, although it looks like we're decreasing the amount of training and conferences, we've moved it to the tech instructional leader budget. That's all we've done, because we feel that they did a great job, and the embedded part of the professional learning is really important.
Is that at the school level then, the tech instruction?
No, it's here under salaries other certified, so you can just see
Okay.
it's a trade.
Yeah.
So training and conferences came down, but salaries other certified went up,
Went up,
because they're the
okay.
ones that
So
are
that's where it's
delivering
going.
that
Okay.
training.
Okay.
And I think those were the drivers. I did,
What's going on?
I don't know. I did want to talk about things that aren't necessarily in my area of cost center, but that I just wanted to address as kind of a concern of mine before we go to questions. So they're not in this cost center? No?
They were taking shelves
just
down.
taking some
They were
shelves
taking
down.
some shelves down. We were
Oh.
distracted by noise. Sorry, Fran.
It's part of the LLC transformation.
Fran, what's it just?
And we all have short attention spans. Easily distracted.
Well, they
Well,
wanted
right,
us
that's all I
to,
was
they
thinking. I
wanted
was
us to
like, what was
talk
that?
about this part of it, which
Yeah.
was the library learning commons. That's what I was gonna talk about.
Did your time happen?
And reconfiguring where the shelves and the tables are going.
So essentially, the two areas of my concern are library books at Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill. Their collections have been underfunded for many, many years. As a result, I can tell you that the Cider Mill collection age in library science, there's a whole science to this, is 1998. It's a 20-year-old collection. So I have brought forward the proposal to add money to that line so that we could bring those books up to a better age level.
And how much are we talking about?
19,000.
Pardon?
Was it 19?
19,000
It's Cider Mill Library.
At Cider Mill.
at Cider Mill. And we had also added about that much for Miller Driscoll.
Or Miller just got it.
Yeah.
Is Miller Driscoll similar
Yeah.
around 1998?
Yeah.
So the two of them.
Middlebrook is actually at a better age level. That collection is in pretty good shape. You'll see that it's been funded better over the years as well. But so that's one aspect of it that I think that just needs some thought, because it's wonderful that we have all these digital tools and digital resources, but the books have to be up to date.
So you did include that in your budget? Or that's, you did
No,
not?
it's on
Okay,
the-
so that's,
it's
and
on
those
the
are the
tier.
books that we were talking about last week as well?
Yeah.
It's on the tiered list, is that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
Okay.
so that's where it is.
I just,
That
I
is
mean, I was
correct.
confused.
So
as
that
to-
was $19,000 per school?
That was at Cider Mill
And Miller Driscoll.
and Miller Driscoll.
Each.
Tho-
For
those two.
Each or combined?
Each, it was 19, yeah,
So it's
it wasn't
38,000.
quite the same, but it was,
Okay.
yeah, figure about 40 plus or minus.
Okay.
And of course, the Library Learning Commons transformation was deferred. I'm specifically concerned about Middlebrook. Middlebrook really does need additional, changes. The model itself, in terms of the Learning Commons, has been very successful, but the resources and, just as you can tell by looking at some of these spaces, they are in sore need of upgrade.
That would be a real step back then for the children that are going from Cider Mill to Middlebrook.
Yes. Yes.
It would be a regression, because, Cider Mill is pretty well, is a great, I think is an ideal or a great example. And that go from having that to Middlebrook where it doesn't exist or it needs help, that's a real step back, disappointment.
Did that have a dollar amount?
Well, it's a 3-year phase, and it's about $26,000 a year.
A
Which
year.
we're deferring till the following year for Middlebrook.
My question would be around staffing.
Okay.
The fact that you've described technology, learning resources, and your infrastructure as being consistent and reliable and relatively up-to-date, and your funding is predictable, and you've got vertical and horizontal alignment, and you have assured experiences, these are all the words you just recently used, I think it's priceless. I really do. So what I'm wondering is around the staffing piece. I noticed that there is an increase a little bit in perhaps your time. And I'm just wondering, does it go far enough? You know, like, to what extent can we leverage it even better for a relatively small extra amount? And I know that we're throwing lots of stuff on the table, I get it, but I also just wondered what your thoughts were about the staffing level. And I'm just looking at, you know, like the leverage, you know, how much smoother and faster can we go for a relatively, you know, is it, the return is going to be larger than the cost of the investment is what I'm asking.
So, and you're asking about this particular budget, not the school-based budgets, where we really did, in fact, get to a very standard, good model at each of the schools. Yeah, I'm thankful for the .2, if that is part of the, certainly, additional time would allow me to do more.
Well, is additional time for you or for someone working with you?
I believe this is.
The change in FTE from .5 to .7 is Fran.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I didn't put either here.
Yeah,
my question is, why isn't it more?
Okay.
You know, .2 and .5 instead of .2.
We need Fran full-time.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, right.
So, not very elegantly, but.
So, you know, the .7 is great. I could do more with more time, obviously. It's difficult. I think that, you know, going into the next couple of years, it's just a consideration because the first year of implementing something like this, as you know, is really about the devices, making sure that, you know, we got the digital citizenship boot camp up. But going into the following years, it's a lot of work with the coordinators and the curriculum people and, you know, looking at each of the years, like you said, these shared experiences and, you know, what can we do to leverage the fact that we have these great resources and great tools. It takes time, but, you know.
Right. Well, I just don't want us to be sort of penny wise and pound foolish, that if you're launching something of this magnitude that has such good results so far and you need this much more staffing, but we're only going to get this much more staffing, I just don't want to make it shaky, that's all.
Fran, to that question, we have this issue of flex time versus.
I'd like to actually address that. That's a great question. So here's one of the other issues. If you're really, we're looking at the standard model. At Miller Driscoll, it is a full fixed schedule, meaning that we have 2 library media specialists, but they have a full load of classes, which makes co-teaching, collaboration, embedded PD, all the stuff that I just talked about, very difficult. At best, I call it reflective collaboration, meaning that they're doing the same thing at the same time, but they really aren't, you know, doing it together, the classroom teacher and the library media specialist. It really is not optimal. It should be, they should at least have some time in their schedule to be doing some collaborative work with teachers. That would require additional staffing at that level, is really what it would come down to.
Okay, so that's the collaborative time that.
Kathy was talking about yesterday.
Yes, exactly,
Mhm.
Kathy
Right.
talked about it.
Yeah, so she
Yeah.
manages it by including the LLC
Right.
staff as part of her
Right,
specialist staff and the
And Middlebrook
rotation.
has tried to grab it from various team
Right,
meeting
right,
structures and
right.
all that
And-
stuff.
And
Okay, I get
Middlebrook
it.
is in actually pretty good shape because we introduced a digital literacy course in 6th grade. It's perfect for foundational skills, but the rest of the time is being used as a flexible planning and, you know, all of the work in terms of, you know, kids going in and out and with issues with the Chromebooks, et cetera. The library media staff has just been phenomenal.
You know, what I think is encouraging is that if you take, we didn't have this functionality, this budget area 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And if you look at now our technology budget and this budget combined, we're still slightly below what we spent in 15, 16. And when I think about the progress and what we've been able to do, you know, with both of you guys. I mean, think about it, guys. We are spending less money in this coming budget than we spent 15 and 16. And look at where we are today versus where we were then. I mean, it really is wrong. So it's a one area, I think, where we've made some, the administration, whoever the guiding light has made some incredibly wise choices and has just done yeoman's work and getting this done. And I don't want it to see, I would hate to see us backslide and not keep it going, because it's obviously, you know, meaningful return on investment. But for us to be spending less money, you know, 3 years later,
And it's the quality of the experience is rich, there's no argument.
compared to, yeah, and think about where we were 3 years ago versus where we are today, I think it's truly remarkable. I think, so, whatever we can find to help you guys, to give you guys that you need is, from my perspective, money well invested and well spent.
And I totally second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth that,
Yeah.
because speaking from working in another district, and I can't tell you the clarity of this system and the efficiency and the outcomes compared to the confusion. I mean, well-intentioned and all of that sort of stuff, but
Should've
just
been here 3 years ago.
not put together. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, many other
Yeah.
districts are struggling to figure out a good model.
Yeah.
And to get the right portions and all of that sort of stuff. And Wilton seems to have done it. And my hat's off, especially for the efficiency. And I'm just, you know, I'll go back to the little staffing level. It's like, you know, just let's make sure it's all in place.
Well, and I'm even more impressed now that I'm learning you're only a 0.5 employee, Fran.
Well, actually, she works a full-time schedule.
She clearly does.
That's right, to answer
Yeah,
stuff on the
she really-
weekend.
yeah, she is available.
All the
I know.
But I see her all
24/7.
she's
Yeah.
everywhere, so,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know
24/7 she's
where you
available.
are
I
the
feel
other
like I'm part of the
0.5
Wilton
time.
family for sure.
Yeah. So, anyway, well done. I just-
Richard, do you have anything? Thank you so
Any
much for
questions?
Very good.
spending this afternoon with us.
Actually, have an observation that, you know, technology prices are going down and people prices are going up. So the more you can leverage people with technology, the better for everybody.
Thank you. Is there anything else?
We're meeting tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that
Yeah.
is central
Yeah.
office. I just wanted to.
Well, as a sign of your
And
efficiency,
special
we're
ed, of
finishing.
But we're
This
here again,
presentation
right?
2 years ago, we would have been here till 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Covering the central office.
There's
Yeah,
truth
on
to
our
that.
webpage.
So,
Yeah, right on.
wait, so should we just throw these away?
So
I don't
we're going to
see-
adjourn. Thank you to everyone. We will meet again at 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Can be restored.
And we will hear from Dr. Chuck Smith about curriculum development, Dr. Kevin Smith about district funding, and,
Dr. Andrea.
oh my God, I'm so sorry. Andrea will talk us through the special education budget. It goes without saying that we're going to hear from Andrea tomorrow. And then to remind all of our listeners that Dr. Smith will be presenting his proposed budget to the community on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. in the Middlebrook Auditorium.
I got a boys basketball game.
Thank you.
Oh, I know, that's what I
I've heard
did,
that story.
how to spell glory.
I've heard it.
1,000 ways to spell glory.